turned off during the presentation, during the talk. And that's about it. That's the only instruction. First of all, thank you, each one of you, for doing this, for supporting a cause. We initially had just 50 places, but we've had 56 people signing up. 50 Indian registrations and 6 foreign registrations, and that's a wonderful thing. And the money that's been raised, we have been speaking to and sifting through loads and loads of NGOs, because everyone needs help right now, and we've identified 2 NGOs that we want to support. And one of them is Prostahan, which is based out of Delhi, and they essentially work with children in the slum areas and the urban poor communities, children who've been affected by COVID, children who've lost their caregivers. And what they are doing is they're giving them immediate shelter, counseling, food, and also are working in tandem with the Ministry of Child Welfare to eventually make sure these children are placed in the correct way in good homes, etc. I saw a bunch of adoption requests floating around on WhatsApp, and that really freaked me out. And so I started reading more and more about this, and I really like the work that this particular NGO is doing. And the second one is a nonprofit that's based in Srinagar. It's very simply called Help Poor, the Help Poor Volunteer Trust, and they are helping. With they've been recommended to me by someone who stays in Srinagar, and who has personally seen that they are helping people who can't afford treatment with treatment, and they're providing free ambulance service. So we've tried to find smaller NGOs to support, because the bigger ones are getting a lot of support from a lot of people. So we being a small NGO ourselves, we feel a little more for the smaller ones, maybe. So we try to find the smaller nonprofits to support. So that being said, we can begin now. We can begin all the good stuff now. Marryam ma'am does not need any introduction. All of you are here because you know her, you have read her writings over the years, and you admire her work. And she will be taking us, through the cuisine of Kashmir. And in her own way, she has very categorically told me that she's not one of those people who calls herself a food historian. So do not expect too much history, but do expect what is the everyday kitchen, foodscape, markets, what you find in Kashmiri homes, what you find in Kashmiri Muslim homes, in Pandit homes. She'll also be touching upon Pandit cuisine a little bit, and breads, and of course saffron. And so I'm just going to let her have the floor and enthrall us. We will be playing a little presentation alongside, but it is not directly connected to she's not going to go slide by slide. She's going to speak, and the presentation is more of a visual support for what is being discussed. It's basically the foodscape of Kashmir in a presentation. That's what it is. So I'm handing over to ma'am now, so she can start, and I will go off, and we will start playing the presentation as well. Thank you, everyone. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so very much, all 56 of you. You've actually reposed your trust in me. Thank you. I'm honored. This is about the general Kashmiri food. Not too many people seem to know it. In fact, last year some film was being shot, and a very eminent film person, I wouldn't know who he is because I don't follow the film world very much, asked the question, what do you mean non-vegetarian Wazwan? Why can't there be a vegetarian Wazwan? So I just closed my eyes in anguish, and I said, my goodness, if you are genuinely ignorant, you don't have to keep boasting about it. But here's why no vegetarian Wazwan. Wazwan is, we're not talking about Wazwan. This is everything else except Wazwan. But let me just get this out of the way. Wazwan is a very Kashmiri, very Kuchina Povera way of disposing of an entire sheep. The legs go to make one particular dish called danifol. Something else that the Thais go to make rista and goshtaba. Something else goes to make another dish, and so on and so forth. Put everything together, and you have finished up the whole carcass. There are hardly any vegetables coming into play into a Wazwan. Now, if you want to do a vegetarian Wazwan, I mean, what do you do? Do you take a whole field of vegetables and try and use all of them up in a different way, or what? I mean, and what kind of a vegetarian are you? On the days that a Kashmiri Pandit is vegetarian, he would not eat mutton, but I mean, he never eats garlic, but he eats mutton. So, I mean, they're very different types of vegetarianism. So, let's just not say anything which we don't, let's not comment on anything that we really do, that we know zero about. Let's not say, I want a vegetarian Wazwan. That's Anyway, just keep all your questions in mind. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, and then after that, I will open the floor to questions. I'll take a few of them, and then I'll go on to talk for 10 minutes and just sort of break up the sessions. Otherwise, it'll just be like a college lecture, which I don't want. So there are three types of Kashmiri food. One I don't know very much about at all, so I'm not going to speak of it. That is the Gujar and Bakarwal community. According to the latest census, Gujars and Bakarwals, which are the sheep and the cattle herders, they're across Jammu and Kashmir. All of them are Muslim as far as I know, but I could be mistaken. Um, the Bakarwals don't have a sedentary life. They move from the summer pastures to winter pastures and back. The Gujars originally used to either do the same or, well, they're all connected with animals, uh, and they use their milk, and they're the ones who used to sell milk, they're the ones who used to sell meat, etc. And now many of them have got sedentary lives. The government has given them a lot of help, so that many of them have settled down into pakka houses in sort of villages and that kind of thing. Not very much is known about. Nobody would know. I mean, I've asked many scholars, etc., in Kashmir about the Gujar uh, cuisine. Not too many people appear to know. So I'm completely clueless, but I'm going to research that. The other uh, the rest of the population is Pandit and Muslim. Pandit, unfortunately, there are not too many of them in the Kashmir Valley at the moment. They're in Jammu and spread across the world, in Delhi, in USA, and Australia, etc. We're going to talk a little bit about Pandit cuisine, but our home cuisine is Muslim cuisine. So I'll be taking you through that basically. Pandit food, all Pandits or most Pandits eat meat, that is mutton. Traditional Pandits never used to eat chicken because I think that chicken, I mean, in the old days, like people's grandmothers, etc., used to feel that chicken is kind of like a and not a very, it's a scavenging bird, so it was not considered ideal to eat its flesh. Now, I suppose 90% of pundits would eat chicken. Uh, Pundits do not cook their mutton with garlic or onions. Instead, they use hing. And that special combination of the flavor of hing with mutton, that is what gives Pandit food its exclusivity and its uniqueness. Up on the screen is a Pandit thali. This has been shot in Delhi, sorry, in Gurgaon. Um, Similar dishes, not the same, but similar dishes are also found in Muslim food, but the way of cooking it will be very slightly different. So if you kind of keep hing in the background, you can't really you, or if you're not very familiar with the flavor of hing, you probably would not know the difference between one cuisine and another. Like a very popular Pandit dish is chaman kalya, which means paneer cooked in milk. That's quite a famous dish. Another famous dish is neni yakni, which means meat cooked in dahi, which is exactly the same parallel in Muslim food. We also have maz yakin, which means exactly the same thing. One person cooks it with garlic and the other person cooks it with hing. Couple of things that pandits have which Muslims don't have. Okay, pandits have something called everyone has haq, but the way pandits cook haq is absolutely an art form. They take this collard greens. I think Shubhra was going to show us a picture of collard greens. They were the very first pictures, the two pictures that appeared on the screen. Green leaves. So uh, yes, the one on the both these are haq. I suppose you can get them now in places like Delhi where there's a sizable Kashmiri population, but it is grown in Delhi and therefore it lacks the finesse of haq that is grown in Kashmir, because of course Kashmir is the has the ideal growing conditions and the climate for haq. Delhi actually really does not, especially with the pollution that we have in our lovely city. Um, they just take haq and they kind of blanch it in boiling water for a few minutes, boil it with lots of oil also in it and a pinch of haldi and sorry, a pinch of hing and a teaspoon of salt, and that's it. And the way pandits cook it, it remains dark, bright green, and the leaves are glossy because of the oil, and it just melts on your palate, and eaten with very very hot rice, it's the finest meal. I don't think that there's any Kashmiri who would say that, oh, we want meat after this. If you have haq and butter, which is what rice is called, that's it. You don't need anything else. So it's not that I'm sorry, the SMSs are coming and going, and I really can't see from this distance because I'm 18 inches or so away from my screen. So do forgive me if I appear to not answer your SMSs. It's just my shortcoming. um, Nobody who eats haq and butter would say, now we want meat. I mean, it's a dish in itself, it's a delight in itself, and it's elemental in the way that it symbolizes Kashmir. I know to a lot of visitors to Kashmir, oh, they've heard of Wazwan, and we are going to eat Wazwan, and we are going here to eat Wazwan, and we are going there to eat Wazwan, but there's actually nothing as quintessentially Kashmiri as haq and butter. And I had it. We had it for dinner last night, as a matter of fact. I can't remember the last time I had Vazwan, maybe 6 months ago, maybe more, and I don't even miss it. Um, the other great dish of the Pandit community is dum alwa, dum aloo. They take large alus, all exactly of the same size, and they prick them with not a knitting needle, but a darning needle, a nice fat darning needle, so that when you prick it from one end and take it out through the other, there's a small little hole that actually comes into the aloo, and you do it multiple times so that there's a network of holes bored through every aloo, and you take about 10 alus and you bore each aloo exactly the same number of times, and then you put the whole lot into very hot oil. You fry it, and then you take lots and lots of hing, lots of chili powder, haldi, and a little bit of sauce, and then keep frying it until all the masala penetrates right into the aloo. And then after that, you put your stock, your water, or your a little bit of dahi and water, or whatever. I wouldn't know the recipe, so don't ask me. But the pricking of each potato, that is the most painstaking part, and that's where lots of people take shortcuts. One shortcut and it's not dam over. You just have to go the whole length, and you just have to do you have to get this whole network, and by the time you eat the aloo, you just press it gently with your fingers, and the whole thing is just, it just falls apart, and inside the aloo, it's is as bright red as outside the aloo. That's the miracle of dam aloo. Personally, I've never seen anyone else except a Kashmiri Pandit making it. But of course, exactly, wow. Of course, if you can do it, I mean, if you can get the recipe, if someone stands over you and says, now do this, now do that, and if you're patient enough to do it, I dare say technically anyone would be able to make dum halwa. The third thing, which is what I love of Pandit cuisine, is mats. That's koftas, but they're not round; they are elongated, something like sausage shape. Uh, they're sort of like tight, because I mean, like they don't have. It's not loose and yes, yes, right at the bottom down there next to the two things that you can see, that is mats. Um, you have they exactly like meatballs, but they, and that too is redolent with the flavor of hing. And my goodness, just thinking about it, I'm so feeling hungry. As you can tell, I just love Pandit food. Uh, for daily use, Pandits have very simple. They have dahi, they have rice. Okay, we have rice. Pandits have rice. But the thing, I mean, everyone in Kashmir has to eat rice. Rice comes into a number of our similes and our proverbs, as white as rice, as beautiful as rice, and so on and so forth. The Pandit community prefers to have rice that is hot, and they also have rice that is slightly more cooked than the typical Muslim family would have rice that is just about al dente, and kind of no compromise on that. And rice is usually cooked in the morning, and it's served at lunch. Soon after lunch, we begin to cook the rice, because traditionally families were very large, around 10 people, three generations, that kind of thing. So if you try to make rice a la minute, you'd probably have to have your dinner at like 12 o'clock at night. So that's why we used to try and do it. We used to try and start the dinner preparation at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that by 3:30 the rice was done, and then we could start making afternoon tea. So, like for a Kashmiri lady in a traditional household, that's how I started out life 30 years ago, because I used to live with my parents in law, with my unmarried sister in law, with yeah, that's about it. And of course, my husband and my two children, and then the two other brothers got married, and then their wives came in, and their children came along. So, like all of us were one slightly chaotic family, but like there had to be a certain method to preparing meals, so that like it would sort of go like clockwork. One person wasn't feeling well, the other one would take over, and so on and so forth. Now that is kind of like the exception rather than the rule. Now there are very few families with more than five people. Many families have become nuclear. And I'm going to talk about copper on the next section, but like it's kind of been the break up of the family as a like 12 member, 15-member place, chaotic as it is. It had the advantages of structuring a whole lot of our food habits together, because you couldn't possibly do something that grandpa would not have liked, because grandpa was the nominal head of the family. Now there's no grandpa. Now, for example, in my house there's just me and my husband for most of the year, and my children both work outside Kashmir, and when I'm outside Kashmir I'm in Delhi. So then who cares? Just come on, let's grab a sandwich and that's our dinner. And a glass of milk or Horlicks or something, and that's it. But when you are living in a homestead with three generations, you don't have a sandwich and a glass of Horlicks for dinner, which is what the family has been the crucible of Kashmiri culture and cuisine for all these years. Okay, now I'm going to stop talking and I'll take a few questions and then after that I'll go on. Anyone?
Any questions, guys, on what's being discussed so far?
Or
There's
anything that you want to
one.
hear also.
Yeah, you can always put in, requests and ask for something you want to hear.
Mustard oil,
There are a
Shanti.
couple of questions. Yeah,
Shanti, mustard oil.
yeah.
Tell me what recipe questions. If you say, oh, thank you. Yes, can you please take us through?
The dishes on the thali.
Okay. Wow. Eeks, I don't think so. So on the at the 3 o'clock position, maybe that's salmon kalia, which is paneer in milk, and then after that is dum aloo, and then after that is something that I really can't make out.
It looks
And
like greens. Could it
but
be haq by any?
I I don't think so. Because is there any gravy in it? I can't see from here on my tiny little cell phone
There's
screen.
watery. It's slightly jhol like watery gravy
Okay,
there
then
that I
that's
can see.
haq. But what
Hmm.
would this orange thing be? Because nobody puts any chutney, etc. Okay, so the stock-like thing is definitely would make it haq. But the orange thing, I wouldn't know what that
It's
is.
a
Nobody
chili.
would. Pardon?
It looks like a chili. It looks like a chili of like a red chili.
Okay, then perhaps it is. I can't see very clearly on this. And this would probably be chokwangan, which means bangan, cooked with a little bit of tamarind, just to make it a little bit sour. Chok is called sour. And this stick is plain dahi, I guess. And then after that is my favorite mats. Hello, dear mats. Please come into my life soon. This is Rajma as it's called in Kashmiri. The story about Rajma is that we get several different varieties of Rajma all over Jammu and Kashmir. No Kashmiri would admit it openly because, like, everything in Kashmir is the best, but actually, the finest quality of Rajma does come from Bhadarwar. And this is probably Bhadarwari Rajma. And right in the middle, there is a snack. I'll be talking about the snacks later on. This is moinj. This is nadar moinj. You take nadru and instead of cutting them across, you cut them lengthways and make them into very thin fingers, and then you coat them with rice flour with a little bit of salt and chili powder, and then deep fry it so that you get finger like absolutely crisp nibbles, and that's actually a street food. But we I think we have some pictures later on. Also, they're all orange colored. This is a very famous street food. One of the few street foods which is actually vegetarian. Otherwise, we kind of thrive on meat. Any more questions?
There was a question about haq. Is it a leafy vegetable? Is it different
Yes.
vegetables, or is it just one leafy vegetable? Hmm.
There are different types of haq, if that answers your question. Like yesterday, we were cooking something called Khanyari haq, which is haq that grows in a little district of Srinagar called Khanyar, which is like saying Matunga idli, if you know what I mean. So Matunga is equal to the Khanyar for this purpose. The most famous used to be another place called Cowdor. Cowdara also in English there's one way of pronouncing it, in Kashmiri there's another, so I tend to sort of switch back from Rajma Bhadarwa.
There is one more question, ma'am.
Yes.
Priyanka is asking, Woor, WUR, cooking is something prominent in Pandit households. Will you please tell us a little bit about this?
WUR.
Hmm.
Oh, that is something um like Wazwan. You'd say Lagwood, which means like it's kind of like a party with many dishes.
Okay.
But it's not
Okay.
a particular kind of dish. It is, now that we're talking about it, we Muslims have vazas. Now, vazas, nadru is eaten by both. Yes. Can you elaborate on the spices? Yes, yes, that in the next chapter, so to speak, Rushina. Um, sorry, I've lost my thread.
You were talking about the Woor cooking and then Nadru maybe.
Nadru is eaten by both communities, yes. So uh, Wazwan is cooked by Wazas. They're a kind of a separate, like of course they're Kashmiri, but their occupation is cooking. They don't do anything else. Like you won't see them making walnut wood furniture or something of that sort, for example, because walnut wood furniture requires a high degree of specialization. But even the walnut wood specialist or the multi-trillionaire of Kashmir, he would also bow down to the humble Vaza who wears filthy rags because, he's busy cooking overnight on wood fires and whatnot, and all the gravy is spattered on his clothes. But even the richest man of Kashmir would bow down to him because he's the guy with magic in his fingers. Whereas the richest guy only has everything in his bank, not in his fingers, so to speak. So there's there's a certain cachet that a Vaza has that I have. I mean, they're not rich people, of course, but the cachet that they carry, like we have one of the very good Vazas in Kashmir. Oh yes, so what's his name? He comes from so and so. Uh, like every team of Vazas have a different nickname, so you can tell by the nickname how good they are or how famous they are or whatever. And if he's very famous, then you get respect because your Vaza is more famous than my Vaza, and your Vaza gets all the kudos rather than my Vaza. So it's something like that. You can boast about Vaza. My Vaza is better than yours.
The Vaza Wars.
Vaza, exactly.
I think we can continue, ma'am. I think we're done with the
Right,
questions for now.
right. So just keep your the questions handy so that next time I want to take a break after the next 10 minutes, you just sort of like jump with all your questions. Okay, so one thing about the way we in the Muslim community, the way we eat is we have mutton, say approximately half a kilo for the joint family, and then a little bit, most of it goes at dinner time, it gets finished, and whoever is lucky enough or whoever is present at lunchtime gets a piece of meat. And our pieces of meat are approximately 75 to 100 grams per piece. And they are not, nobody would, no Kashmiri would, neither Pandit nor Muslim would like a piece of meat which has no fat and no bone on it. It has to be attached to a bone, and then the bone has to be gnawed and chewed over by at the end of the meal. And that's the like something like a lollipop, like you keep attacking it and attacking it until it's all gone. So that's the primary thing about, everyone in Kashmir does it. um, so the Muslim community cooks uh, a mutton curries, I mean, to use a very desi term, an aam janta's term, a mutton curry with the gravy made with either tomato ka ras, like of say half kilo of tomatoes or something of that sort, cooked down and then added separately in the last stage, or alus fried separately until they're golden and then added around the last day after the meat has almost cooked. The alus are added in the last stage, and then both of them are given the final cooking together. Or you put green peas, or you put cauliflower, or cauliflower can be pre-cooked in a little bit of tomato gravy and then after that added to the meat. Muslims would cook haq and meat together. Pandits will not. To Pandits, haq is something like a sattvic ingredient, which is not cooked with in the same dekchi as meat, but it is served on the same thali as a mutton dish, because every pandit, except of course on fast days, on vrat days, etc., every pandit eats meat. I mean, I've hardly heard of any pandit who is a vegetarian for religious reasons, unless of course it's the phases of the moon twice a month. Then no pandit eats meat, and also on those days, no pandit would settle a marriage. That like let's have the marriage of our son on so and so date, when they can't be served, when the guests can't be served meat. And one thing about Kashmir, I'm sure it's the Pandit thing, but I have many Pandit friends, but I have never lived in a Pandit household, so I don't know the nuances of all this. Uh, um, Muslims are very Ayurveda influenced, which came as quite a surprise to me in Kashmir. Um, if I wanted, like, suppose mom asked me, that's my mother-in-law asked me, what should we make today? And I'm very fond of green dal, whole moong dal. I'd say, let's have dal and meat. So she'd say, okay, just when you're going into the storeroom was a huge, big walk-in cupboard next to the kitchen. And we would walk in there with like a couple of old cheese tin dabbas with the lid taken off, and the dabba used to be used as a kind of a measurement, and we had any number of those in the old house. um she'd say just get half a cup this tin of pink masoor dal also, because we can't use only green moong because it's too uh, sarad. Sarad is of course means cooling, and cooling in the Ayurvedic sense. So I thought to myself when I was newly married, what is this all about? But I realize now that like all Kashmiris follow, at least all the Kashmiri Muslim families that I have ever come across, all follow Ayurveda uh, to the T. They've not read about it. Nobody would go to a doctor and ask, and if they go to a doctor that practices uh, western medicine, the doctor would say rubbish, don't believe all this. But they would come back and say, doctor doesn't know that much, he's just studied in the English way, so to speak. I just find that very charming, because nobody thinks that um, everyone just believes in it like gospel. That's it. So green moong dal is sarad, means it's sarad. Grandfather said so. My mom said so. So it has to be sarad. That's end of story. Um, so because green moong dal is sarad, you would have to garam karo it by using pink masoor in the ratio of 3:1. Tomatoes are cooling, so you would put not one clove. Usually you would put one clove, like the long. This time you would put either two or three in enough meat for like say in half a kilo meat you would put uh, three longs, because you wanted to. Three longs is a lot. In our family, nobody would cook with such a generous hand of garam masalas, because it was not considered a flavor enhancer, it was considered a medicine. I now realize. Um, So a tomato would be cooked with long, and spinach would be cooked with every conceivable. You would put long, you would put badi elaichi, you would never put choti elaichi because that's the only garam masala which is not garam actually, which whose tahseer is not garam. Uh, and it becomes so much that if you go to someone's house for a meal and they serve you a dish that you don't like say you don't like tomato, there's some people who don't like tomato, and in Kashmir this thing is fairly common, I've seen, because I don't know why, but maybe there's predominance of one ingredient means that there'll only be that one ingredient. There's nothing like mixed veg in Kashmiri cuisine. Either you have tomato or there's nothing at all. So if you don't like tomato, then like too bad for you. So if you go to someone's house, you can't say, yuck, tomato, not me for lunch. So you would say, I'm so sorry, but the doctor told me not to go easy on the tomatoes because I've got hypertension, or you can just make up any story that you want, as long as, like, you can't say, I'm getting white patches on my skin because of tomato, because everyone keeps staring at you and touching your face to see whether you really have white patches. But if you say something which can be covered up, like, I'm suffering from high blood pressure, so I can't have this, they say, oh, no, no, please don't have it. And you have something else. And they'll give you something. And usually it would be something to your liking, because when you go out, when you're invited for lunch, the meal that is cooked with a great deal of thought given to the best dishes that the host can prepare. Like when I was living in the old house, if someone was invited, we would talk about the menu for days and days and thrash it out. All of us sitting around the kitchen, we would say, no, no, let's give them this. No, 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 that is old hat and they make it much better in their house or something of that sort. So it's just a very charming thing that when someone comes, you just go all out on a limb. I guess that is what Kashmiri hospitality is all about. It's very famous, Kashmiri hospitality, like the houseboat community, etc. But exactly, so adorable. Um, some other things, not about meals, but simply about other stuff that is eaten in Kashmir. If you have a bad dream, or if somebody in the family is going to do an examination and is sort of losing self confidence and is crying and saying, I don't think I'm going to pass, or something of that sort, or something that is less than auspicious and you want to turn it into auspicious, you would take rice, you would boil it. This is not the lunch wala rice. This is separate. You would boil it, you would cook it with the turmeric to make it yellow. You would sprinkle salt over it. Then you take a few onions, slice them very finely, fry them expertly so that they become dark brown but they do not burn, and put and mix up everything together, the onions, the oil in which the onions were cooked, the rice, everything together. Of course the rice has to be khada, it can't be sadly I don't have a picture of it, but anyway, uh, it can't be like a mishmash, or it can't be like khichdi or anything, something of that sort. And you can stand on the side of the road and just keep bantoing it to strangers who will grab it with both hands and will keep on eating it like this. And anyone who sees is, at least children who see them on the road, will ask, you can accost a total stranger and say, where did you get that from, where is it being bantoed, and the guy will tell you, just go 7 houses down, and then the guy will begin running in the middle of on the middle of the road to get his share of the we call it tahad, but actually it's tahari. Some people say that it's not a very Muslim tradition and it actually should stop, etc. But like I think it's very charming and I think it's very Indian, so let's just keep it at that. There are a few ingredients that are not sold in markets. Yes, in sorry, that's Shubhra. I can't see so well with this. Uh, I'm using my phone to speak because if I had used my laptop and if the Wi-Fi had gone off because the electricity goes off every afternoon, if the Wi-Fi goes off, then at least I'm saved with 4G. But if on a computer I don't have 4G, so that'll just be the end of the story. So that's why I've decided to use my phone. So please do excuse me for bending forward and backward all the time. Um,
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. I
but
am only just in the comments. I'm sharing descriptions of the pictures on screen. That's it.
yes,
All the
good.
questions I will repeat to you in the end.
Yes. No, but I can't see your name unless I squint like this. So sorry. Acha. So uh, there are people who live on are just around the boundaries of Srinagar. Srinagar has become a very large city in the 35 years or so that I have been associated with it. It's grown and grown like Delhi has grown. Nobody would have ever thought, for like in my childhood, nobody would have ever thought that ek din ek jagah hoga jiska naam Gurgaon hoga. Nobody ever thought that. But now Gurgaon is just as good as Connaught Place or anything like that. So that kind of place has now it's still a little bit countryside and the people who live there are still a bit simple, and sometimes when they go foraging in the fields they see mushrooms, and they have hens that lay eggs, and the hens are free range, so they actually bring them to the center of town to sell them. And if you have an eye and if you sort of keep your ear to the ground, you can actually go to a small little market next to a shrine in the center of the city, and those and you can get beautiful mushrooms, the kind that you can get in say France or something, like oyster mushroom, that description of mushrooms, and bring them home and cook them, and they're absolutely delicious. But this is one of the secrets of living in Srinagar. Everyone does not know about it. um then we have a Dutch gentleman who's kind of made he and his wife have made Kashmir their home. He has he is his father also was a cheese maker. So this guy makes cheese. He makes Gouda cheese in Pahalgam, and also because he is in the countryside, he has access to and because he has access to cows, he also makes very fine ghee. He dabbles with jam, and all his jams are completely excellent. I don't know whether it's proper to give you his name or address or anything of that. I'll just pass it on to Shubhra at the end of this, just in case anyone would like to order. They ship it across to all parts of India. But his Howdah cheese, we buy it. Or I mean, that's a pantry staple in my refrigerator. Now comes the main thing of snacks. Usually, Kashmiris don't eat, they're not in the habit of nibbling. And they'll never go out, share a pizza, and come home and say, Mommy, no dinner for us. It's not heard of. It's simply not the culture to do it. Why? Only God knows. Food is considered not sacred, I would say, but food is considered something that you don't get out of. And nobody would, if they eat a pizza, they'd come home and also have dinner. I mean, they wouldn't have a pizza instead of dinner or instead of lunch. No way. There are some snacks, uh, many of them are meat only. Like, for example, when I was first associated with Kashmir in the late 80s, there used to be this place called Makai Point, which means um, ma- corn, makki, point. And like corn was, bhuttas were sekhod over coal fire, etc., and given to you. That that name has stuck. Now it's called it's still called Makai Point. But guess what? Now there are about 20 shops, if not more, all selling meat. Those kantis and tikkas. There's skewered lamb or whatever meat they have. I have no idea because I'm not a meat eater, so I would never dream of going there. It's just meat, and more meat with some like roughly fried onion rings sprinkled with a hell of a lot of red chili powder, and these little tikkas of meat which are grilled and given to you. The whole place smells of it's in the open air, but that whole area smells of meat, and it smells of smoke. I mean, it smells quite delicious actually, but there's nothing. I mean, you wouldn't get a vegetable over there, you wouldn't get soup over there, you wouldn't get any other kind of snack. It's just all these stickers. And still, I mean, and there's always a traffic jam outside because it's extreme. Tuj, yes, it's called Tuj. But Tuj is the Kashmiri word, so nobody else would understand it. I'm trying to not speak Kashmiri. So, um, I'm not able to understand. You eat meat at dinner, you eat meat at lunch, and then you go out and want to eat more meat. I'm not a meat eater, so I just don't get it. But I suppose whatever floats your boat. Uh, then there's this big mosque called uh, Hazrat Bal. That it's a mosque or a shrine, whatever. They have a lovely market over there where you can get all sorts of very village things because it's on the outskirts of Srinagar. It used to be on the outskirts, now it's right in the middle of the city. They also have like whatever shops they have selling anything to eat, it will be this tikkas, and you can smell them from a mile because of all the coal fire. There, fortunately, nobody does it on electricity or anything. It's always coal fire. And no, there are no traditional foragers. I'm afraid that's not an option. And Kashmir is not that developed. First, you have to it's just not the mindset over here in Kashmir, but I suppose that it's not the mindset in most parts of the country foraging. And if you do forage, I doubt you'll be able to find a market within the state, maybe when you go out. The Gujars and Bakarwals because they have lots of meat, they have lots of milk, and they need to store it. Uh, So what they do is they make a kind of a chapati with it, I suppose by curdling the milk or something. They make a flat chapati in Kashmir that's called Mashkaraj. And in Jammu, they don't make a flat chapati, they make an idli shaped cake out of it also. And I think in Jammu, they have more buffaloes than cows. And in Kashmir, they only have cows and no buffaloes at all. So that is used for that is a cheese. It's the local cottage cheese, only sold by Gujars. You'll never go to a supermarket and say, "Give me Musk Raj." So that's a very charming thing when people go to Pahalgam. They visit this grimy little market where a couple of Gujar and Bakarwal shops, because um, Pahalgam, the word is actually Pahalgam, which means shepherd's village. And the shepherds were, of course, they had sheep, but they also had cows and other pack animals. Spell out the name of what? Mashkraj? Mash. Mashkraj, I suppose. And it's available in Pahalgam in one particular market where the herding community. Yes, yes, that's right, chef. The herding community looks after, so it's available over there. But it's a little bit, it's kind of seasonal, you may not get it, etc. And when you have it, you can, I love to have it raw, but you can also, our grandmother, who's still alive, by the way, she must be past 90, god bless her, she used to cook it for my husband when my husband was a child. um, and it didn't melt with her. When I put it on the fire, at once it melts, and then it's not Merskrat anymore. So I don't know how she used to do it, but my husband tells me it was very delicious. So then there is a very famous thing called Moin's Ghoul. Now this is the one thing that is not meat driven, although there's an element of non-vegetarian in it. It is a batter made with rice flour, salt, and um, chili powder. The rice flour gives it crispness, and then you can put all sorts of things into that, but you'd usually put in the pandit thali that we showed you, right in the middle there were those long sticks of something that is actually moin's ghoul. And that is one, moin's ghoul is the whole range, the variety of stuff. But um, you can have gram also. There's a particular kind of chana. You put, you make a clump of them, put into the batter, and then it fry the whole, like say about 10 of them or something, so you can pop the whole thing into your mouth. And that is considered a favorite with children. Then there's one type with a small fish. It's about say 4 inches long, and by the time you finish putting lots of masala and things in it, you can start showing, this is moin's guard. So there's a fish inside, and it's just gutted, cleaned very roughly, and then this masala is put on it, and it's deep fried, and quite often it's deep fried right in front of you. Yes, it's the same rice batter. Then comes our bakery. If you can bring up all the bakery pictures one by one, please. Our bakery is like sliced bread has never really taken root over here in Kashmir. Shubhra, how many more minutes do I have?
We have another hour, so you can take your time
My
as much
goodness
as you
me.
want.
Okay, no
You
issues.
can- This can even be 10 minutes, 20 minutes,
Yes,
half an hour,
okay.
whatever,
Yes, yes.
and some
So,
time for questions.
right, so 10 minutes and then after that, questions. Um, we don't have anything like sliced bread over here, and if we did, I don't think anyone would buy it. This is a family of bakers, and the round white discs that you see, the pile of them, those are breakfast breads called lavasa. They either serve for breakfast, or if you order them separately, you can take them on a picnic because they're quite easy to eat. They're large, say 8 inches across, 9 inches across, and then you can roll up stuff in them like tikkas, kantis, etc., or vegetables or whatever else. You can make a little roll out of it. Or you can just take Rogan Josh. So many people love to eat Rogan Josh in the house, and they go out for a picnic and they're eating Rogan Josh all over again. The concept of taking a cheese sandwich wrapped up in foil does not exist in Kashmir. But I suppose that's what adds to the charm. Um, so you have this, and it's very unusual to have the whole family sitting in a bakery, because it's like the bakery next to my house. It's just a few, four men. The guy at the counter, he is the one who owns the place, and then there's one guy who manages the tandoor, who's got his head halfway into the tandoor. I don't know why their faces, their skin doesn't appear to get singed. And then there's one guy who rolls out the dough, and then he marks it with either a fingernail or four fingers. He keeps marking it, and he can tell, or anyone can, I mean, with a little bit of practice, even I've learned to tell who possibly, which baker could have possibly made it, because everyone's thumb impressions, finger impression, nail impression is all different. And you can tell it, and then from there it's slapped into the tandoor, and then it's taken out. Can we just see a few more bakery pictures, please, and bakers also? This is our guy. So this is the one who scratches the pattern out with his finger, and on the left is what it looks like. This pile of, this is only his unique UID जिसे कहते हैं, like you can tell. And that pile over there is his all the flour, the white flour that they use. No whole wheat flour ever enters a Kashmiri bakery. Kashmiri bakeries open at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3:30. The flour is the dough is made somewhere at the back, and then it's brought, and then it's sort of mixed with ghee if it's going to be a special type of roti, or it's just plain flour and water, and then it's made into little throat or whatever they're making. Every period of the day has a different type of bread. So our guy, this is on the right is bakar khani, which is flaky pastry, and on the, sorry, on the left, and on the right is chachoru. Chachoru has, with a little dimple in the middle. Chachoru has been compared to the Jewish bagel. Personally, I don't see very much of similarity, but people do assure me that it's one thing is has been taken from another, and there's a theory which nobody has ever been able to fully explain, that Kashmiris are in fact from some Jewish clan, some lost tribe of Israel, etc., etc. But the Raj Tarangi, which was written in the 11th century, I mean, nothing is written. It's a complete historical record, and it does not say anything about what anything about Jewish, anything about Judaism, or there's no comparison. It's just an completely Indian piece of history writing written by a very erudite person called Kalhana. So, but this thing is a bit, I mean, it's quite remarkable how something like the Chachoru has come up in Kashmir. How does I'm sorry, I cannot read more than one line. So how does the Sachoru differ from? If you can
How does
see it.
a potato differ from a bagel in texture?
Oh, the bagel is, it's got yeast in it, so this one does not. This one, or this one has something or the other, but I mean, it's extremely different. So it's just the shape of it.
There is one more bread that you shared with me, which is not on the presentation. Can I just turn the camera on and show it? I'm not sure it's very clear.
Yes, of course.
It's this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then I should have told you this a bit a while ago. There are two types of bread. Uh, the baker that whose pictures we have been seeing, they all have tandoors. And the people who don't have tandoors, because Kashmir is very famous for their exquisite baking. I mean, even a Dehat who has never learned to read or write, the kind of pastries and cakes that he can turn out, will make your mouth water as you go by, uh, just smelling the aroma. Um, but that guy, the cake wala, who is also this person, who's Shubhra showed us, uh, they have ovens. They may not be uh, grand German ovens or anything. They may be very homemade. If you anyone has been to Purani Delhi and seen those or maybe Muhammad Ali Road in Bombay and seen those stacks and stacks of um, trays which are all fitted into a kind of a grid, and right at the back there's some coal burning or something. That's it. So that's different from a tandoor, but it's, of course, it's got heat in it. So all what is not baked by a baker, the baker only bakes bread. For someone asked the question, what is it served with? They only served with salt tea in the morning and salt tea in the afternoon. If you don't drink salt tea, if you drink uh, cream tea that's with milk and sugar uh, in the morning and milk and sugar in the afternoon, no problem. I drink coffee both times. Um, and it tastes as delicious. All these things taste as delicious with coffee as with anything else. That's okay. Nunchai, yes. Nun. Nunchai. Nunchai is salt tea. Noon means salt. I think it means it in Luna or something in Punjabi also. So noon in Kashmiri. And there's no sugar in that, there's salt. Yes, exactly. And the salt tea is made with a unfermented but blackened. I mean, it's made in exactly the same process as the regular tea, but it's not fermented. And Bakar Khanis are not featured in. Sorry, I guess sorry I cannot see the whole thing. So
The question is, Bakar Khanis don't feature in lunch or dinner at all, is it?
no, no, all these things are only to be eaten with salt tea. Can you just show us those pictures of a tea time and like one cup of tea
Yes,
and a whole bunch of
yes,
snacks with it? So,
I will. Yeah.
if you go to someone's house, they'll give you like, no, not this, please. Still have to talk about this.
Next,
Yes, this. So this is what is called Lipton chai, but it's actually cream tea, or I mean regular tea, with several types of biscuits. All these biscuits have been made in a traditional oven, fired by coal or fired by wood. And the bakers are very skillful because they can pack layers and layers with they can pack layers and layers with different sorts of things, uh, different products, and each product will be baking at a certain temperature and a certain time, and they know when to take out one tray but not the other. I can see rusks also in this picture. Okay, now I think it's going to be question time while I go off to make my charge my phone. Can we take a few questions, please?
yes. Do you want to put the phone to charge? Should we start
Yes,
with the questions or shall we wait for you?
yes, yes. But you will have to read them out because I'm not able
Yes,
to.
I should read them out. Yes. Okay, I'll just go back a little. Okay. Right. So, one question is the food and curries. Should I start now?
Yes, yes, please do.
Yeah. The food and curries in the hilly regions are sort of soupy, but the Kashmiri gravies are not so soupy. They're thick. Is there a reason behind this?
I don't know what the other curries are eaten with, but we have to think of our medium. Our medium is rice, so everything has to be rice friendly. So that's why if it's, and we don't drown our rice. This is a style of eating. We don't drown our rice with gravy. We just put a little bit of gravy and somehow, and eating white rice is not I mean, in say Delhi, for example, where I've lived most of my life, if you offer someone white rice and give him half a teaspoon of gravy, he'll say, "Wow, what's going on?" But over here, it's the norm. You can eat white rice in a mouthful of 10 grains of rice with stained with gravy and 10 white, no problem, if you know what I mean. It's it's all in the day. I mean, rice is loved. It's there's a it comes into proverbs. It comes in, everything is about rice. Kashmiri cuisine is about rice, so we don't require very soupy gravies. I think that's probably what the reason is.
Okay, another question. Are there any preservation techniques used by Kashmiris? For example, pickling or fermenting?
Not fermenting, and we don't much care for it. Uh, we don't much care for the idea of fermenting, but we do pickle. The most common pickle being made of, uh, we have nadru, we have carrot, and we have moinge. Oh gosh, what some not a turnip. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. Nol cole.
Karam muddi, karam.
Ha, karam sag, yes.
Hmm.
Yes, karam sag is a very, and we have like one pickle with gand gobi, that's right. So we have a couple, we have one pickle which has two or three different ingredients in it. And there's one guy in Srinagar who has about 70 different kinds of pickle. He pickles everything. You show him an ingredient, he'll pickle it. He has pickled cherries, he has pickled apricots, he has pickled fish is quite common over here in Kashmir. But I mean, he just has such a range. It's completely magnificent. I'm not doing this to line my pockets. I guess everyone probably has figured that out. So if anyone would like the telephone number of any of these people, I'd be more than happy to give it. The cheese guy, or the cheese guy is, he only speaks Kashmiri. Maybe he speaks a little bit of Hindi, but of course the Dutch guy, the cheese guy speaks English and Gojri, but the pickle guy only speaks Kashmiri and maybe Hindi. But you're welcome to ask, because everyone's over, like, willing, happy to do business.
Thank you. That would be lovely. There are a couple of questions on breakfast and spices, but I'm letting that go because you will be talking about them. I'm coming to questions on breads. So Asim is asking, are there specific breads that have to be eaten at specific times of the day?
Yes, Lavas yeah, Padmini, I'll share it with Shubra and she'll farm it out to whoever wants. And if anyone wants to know any more telephone numbers of any food producers, because I'm not really talking about dressmakers, etc., etc., but like food producers, I'm more than happy to share. So yes, I'm coming to rote. So at breakfast time, it is mainly either lavas or tsachoru. Sorry, not tsachoru, it is chot. Sort or lava. Some people like this, some people like that. When we used to live with my parents in law, my father in law is no more, and we used to live with brothers in law and their wives and everyone. So that was a large family with children also. So everyone had their own specifications. So dad was in charge of buying the bread. He just used to buy a certain number of lavas and a certain number of sort, and we'd all like uh, one person would eat whatever they wanted, and he kind of knew what who to buy what for. So now over here there's just me and my husband, so he knows that he has to just get two sort. That's it. And then we have nunchai. That's breakfast is a very, very Spartan meal in Kashmir. There's no, I mean, traditionally there's no jam, which is a bit of a pity because there's such a wonderful fruit and you could sort of make jam and marmalade out of them. But there's not that culture over here at all. So you make, there's just nunchai, salt tea, and there's bread, and the bread comes from the baker. It comes into the house straight onto the breakfast table or the breakfast dastarkhan, and it's consumed immediately. What is left over is fed to the birds, etc.
Right. There are some more questions on bread, so I'll just continue with those.
Yes,
Are all of these breads khameer based? Are they, is there yeast added to them?
some, like I think Sachoru has yeast added to it. Um, Sort doesn't. Lavasa would certainly not. It just depends from bread to bread. And the ones
Oh,
that are in the other kind of bakeries, Mughal chai is a name for nun chai.
right.
And it,
One more bread question. Sorry,
yes,
sorry, you were saying
yes,
something.
yes, yes. No, Mughal chai and on nun chai is served in a samovar, and now families have even dispensed with using a samovar because it has to be clean. There has to be a few pieces of coal in the center to make it burn and to make the tea hot. And then you have to take it to the kalai wala every 6 months. Nobody could be bothered about so much of maintenance, so they just buy a flask and they make do with that for until the flask packs up and they go and buy another one. That's it. Yes, kangris are still in use. You cannot imagine Kashmir without a kangri because in winter that's the time there's no electricity. So uh, you if you don't have a kangri, then my goodness, a hot water bottle is not going to do the job. And then you can uh, cook an egg in a kangri. You can't cook a egg on top of a hot water bottle.
There's a question. Are these Kashmiri breads unique to the Muslim community, or are they widely consumed by the nomadic and Pandit communities as well?
Nomadic, I really don't know. I genuinely don't know, which is a shortcoming because you don't get to meet them on a daily basis. And if you do, they have just got uh, sort of like they're very shy, they don't want to talk, and you certainly can't engage them in conversation. Pandit, they're all, I mean, 99% they're the same. Somebody might want it thicker, somebody might want it finer, etc., etc. And they call by slightly different names. Like we call it chot, Pandits call it gidda. That's it.
Okay. So another question about
Right.
the bakar khani. What is it eaten with usually?
Bakar Khan is eaten with nun chai.
Okay. So all breads, essentially, most of the breads are eaten with noon.
All.
All.
Because meal time is equal to rice.
Right.
I'm so sorry, there's a gentleman outside who's selling things for 100 rupees. So he usually shouts his wares. So I hope you can't hear him. But if you can, excuse me, please.
Okay. One last question on the breads, and
Yes, of course.
then we can continue. Can we find books or articles on the bakers and their breads and cakes or old recipes anywhere?
Oh gosh. You know, the worst part about Kashmir is that there's very little written material that is accessible. Like some years ago, maybe 8 years ago, something, I was trying to access something to do with the all important Wazwan. And absolutely nobody could help me. One guy told me, go to the university, there's a library over there. So I went. The librarian said, you're trying to find a needle in a haystack. Even I don't know which. First of all, no book in English is going to be about a Vazwan, so you forget about that. There are some books, they'll either be written in Persian or they'll be written in Urdu. Now, I don't read either language, so I was a bit nonplussed. Then he says, the was one, and then 10 people joined and they all gave me their spiel. No, 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 it'll be over here. No, 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 it'll be over there. So I just said, it's just we are not good at keeping records. It's just not in our character, if that is the correct word. When was so and so tree planted? When did so and so come? When was this? When was that? Priyanka, dear, I can't see your whole question. So why don't you just read? I mean, why don't you just address them to Shubhra and then she'll read them out to me? Sorry for
Yeah.
the inconvenience.
She's asking about Halim in Srinagar. And I
Just
think you're going to
put
speak
that,
about it.
just put up that picture of two plates, please. One of them with
Yes,
salt and one of them with Halim. Yes,
yes.
that one. So the Priyanka, the top pictures of Halim. It was made by the most famous Halim. It's called Hirsa in Kashmiri Halim. So it was made by the most famous guy. He is in the old city in a place called Ali Kadal. And my husband went one freezing morning in winter because you could. It's not a summer dish by any stretch of imagination. By the time you finished eating almost 250 gram or more of pure meat, no bones, no gristle, nothing. It's just pure meat with a ton of mustard oil heated and poured upon it, and you wolf it down with couple of breads. I mean, you're in heaven. I mean, that is one meat dish that even I eat. It's absolutely wonderful. Um, it's cooked. Shall I describe? Is anyone interested in how it is cooked? Okay, I'll just tell you. A whole lot of meat. Say yes, yes, yes. Okay, get the hint. Okay, so you have to have a platform in your shop because it's made in a shop. um, the platform is underneath will be where you keep your fire, your source of like wood, etc. And it obviously has to have an outlet so that the smoke can go out wherever. On that, you keep an enormous big bartan, which has a narrow kind of a neck. Inside the bartan, you keep a little bit of water and you keep a little bit of rice, raw rice, and you keep um, a ton of meat and spices. Now, you ask any hirsa wala, how do you make it? They'll just point up to the sky and they'll say, the blessings of God or something. I mean, something like that. But of course, it's also technique and know-how. Then what you do is you have to you cook it with the bones because without the bones, you are not going to get the flavor of the meat. Then you take literally what as big as a shikara paddle is. You take such a huge spoon. It's called a choncha, basically a vaza choncha. And you take it and you begin hilawing it. Now you can only see what you see in the neck, through the neck of the thing, because the hirsa gor, the guy who's selling the hirsa, is sitting inside his shop, and the main part of the hirsa is like at the bottom of this deg, and the he can only see the bottom of he can't really see the bottom of the deg because there's no light, and he's doing this all at night, and he's just hilawing it and hilawing it, and you have to keep stirring it very vigorously towards the end so that nothing sticks to the bottom of the deg. Um, and then you I don't know how they manage to remove the bones, but by early in the morning, you get a meat paste which is silky. And the bones, of course, have to be discarded. But as I say, I don't know how. And they're not going to tell you how. And don't bother to try asking them recipes, etc. Then they'll just give some excuse. And then third or fourth time, they'll just be blunt and say, okay, have you eaten? Acha, now please go. And then they'll give you a couple of tsot. I think you start with two tsot first, and then after that you keep going on. And as much meat as you eat, you're charged for that. One plate, one and a half plate, two plates, etc., etc. And then some of them serve nuncha and some of them don't. It's a very rough and ready, very dhaba style, hugely atmospheric. If any of the men over here want to try it, I have no hesitation in telling you, go to, there's Ali Kadal and there are a few others. A few other places, but only in the old city. Kadal means bridge, and the old city is the city through which the Jhelum passes. So there are seven large bridges and many, many, many smaller ones. So Ali Kadal is the sixth bridge, I think. They don't have to tenderize, na? It By the time you finish cooking it for like 6 hours, it's going to get tenderized on its own and intermittent stirring. And then fire first it's hot and then after that it becomes it no, the bone does not dissolve. The bone does not dissolve because I have cooked it in a pressure cooker at home in Delhi, and the bone does not dissolve, but that undefinable sadaka flavor eludes me. But my parents said, like, when dad was alive, he loved it. So I used to make it almost every I mean, I used to make it a few times every winter. Now I couldn't be bothered because he's not there to have it to enjoy it. But he used to say that mine is better than this guy's. I don't believe it, but it was very cute of him to have said that. Anyway, but the bone does not dissolve. I used to remove the bones with a Hirsa, Harissa, Hirsa. I used to remove the bones with a pair of tongs. And sometimes it gets a little bit fiddly, but then you tell your family that if you just get a small splinter or something, please excuse. And I I don't know about Brar. When did you see this? Recently? Because I think Chef Brar was recently, very recently, last week or something in Kashmir. Yes, Harissa.
Right.
Okay,
So I
okay.
think, yeah. Uh, Ma'am, we also had a few questions on the spice box, the Kashmiri spice box. So should we touch upon that a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. All the questions, let's take them now.
Yeah.
Somebody has been asking me one question a couple of times. I'm sorry, I don't remember the. I think was it about what bread is eaten with what that we've done. The
Yeah.
only
There was a,
time, okay, this sort which you see in this picture, it is, when you give some, when you have a visitor in your house who is coming to your house for the first time, or some very important guest or something, and you want to treat them, then you don't give them only tea and a chai samosa kind of thing. You would give them some meat. Now, with the meat, if you give them rice, then it becomes like lunch. So then they can say, no, 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 we don't eat, we are not eating rice these days, etc. So your whole plan goes for the six. So what you do is you give like you give some meat with very, very little gravy, and then you give them, or you give them couple of kebabs or something nice and appetizing and glistening with oil, with a couple of these sort, and nobody is going to say no. Then they can eat as many or as few sort as they want. That is the only time. And if you go on a picnic and you don't want to take rice, then you take sort, but you'll always have some meat or something. Nobody is going with vegetables on a picnic. Those are the only very, very, very few times that Tot is eaten um, in Kashmir outside breakfast and afternoon tea. Okay, so should I deal with fish now?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fish, there is something called kosher guard and there's something called punjaib guard. Guard means fish. And uh, both of them are kind of carp. So the carp that is found outside Kashmir or the carp that has been introduced recently to Kashmir, that is called Punjab guard because in Kashmiri, everything that is not from Kashmir is Punjab. And you say it with a slight curl of your lip, Punjab. So, kosher guard is, of course, the best kind of guard that there could be on God's earth. That comes from Kashmir. Of course, everything that comes from Kashmir is absolutely spectacular. So that's the uh, ideology. Um, so you have kosher guard and Punjab guard. They're both species of carp. Then the Duke of Edinburgh, the Duke of something or the other, Bedford or something, in the end of the 18th century, had given the Maharaja or given someone or the other in Kashmir a present of trout, rainbow trout. And those rainbow trout were introduced into many of the rivers. So now they have divided the rivers into fishing beats, each of 1 kilometer long, and they give permits, and you can go there, catch 6 fish. You're allowed to only catch six, and you bring them and have them cooked. Um, Trout is on its own, like that's it hardly has any scales, and it's a very clean fish to cut and to eat, and it's absolutely delicious. Kosher guard is a little bit messy because it's full of scales, and you have to scrape it. And in my humble, because I'm originally from Goa, I've never been able to get the taste for kosher gourd. And the preparation of any Kashmiri fish dish is usually lots and lots of oil, lots and lots of masala. You fry the fish until it's very, very dark brown because they're not natural fish eaters. So you have nadru cut into slices, but they cut like diagonally. They're not really cut like, I mean, it would not be say like this sort in the picture. It would be an elongated sort of an oval slice rather than a round slice. And then you have mooli, and you have a couple of other vegetables, and you have a few greens, and all of that with the fish, and tons of oil and tons of um, red chili powder. So by the time the fish comes and it's like, dark brown from the outside, it's not really a fish dish, then it's just a masala dish. But I guess that's enjoyed. But a couple of times, you have it twice a year and then you say, bas bahut ho gaya. Kashmiris are not natural fish eaters, and if you give them a little bit of trout just fried in a little tiny bit of butter with sprinkle of salt and a squeeze of lemon on it, nobody would be able to. I mean, a Kashmiri who's not been out of the state probably would not be able to eat it. He would probably not be able to get the concept of ye kya hai. No, there's no other meat eaten. If you're asking about beef, I have never heard. Maybe there is, but fish is used to make it's only kosher guard. It's not, it's kosher guard is the one fish that is sort of like not prized, but kosher guard is eaten. No other fishes is eaten with even a mild amount of enjoyment. That's carp, CARP, carp. Any more questions, please?
There are a couple of more. There are a couple more questions on the masalas, the spices. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah. Okay. So Priyanka's asked a question about musk budij. The main part of rice cultivation in Kashmir is in Pulwama district. And there's one particular part of Pulwama where the most prized rice, it just grows automatically. Like say basmati, what if you plant it in that particular place, it'll just grow. So this is called mushk buduj, which means a, fragrant seed, and it's very fragrant and of course naturally extremely delicious. uh, they serve it on Wazwans, but I don't see why we sometimes buy a kilo and we just consume it in the house, like with a very ordinary meal, so that the rice stands out more than the accompaniment. I think it's one of the delights of living over here is to occasionally go in for mushk pudij. Another is you is eaten either like you can have it in a fish in a gravy with another, and you can have um, a couple of other vegetables like mooli, sliced another mooli leaves or heart leaves, and the fish with minimal gravy, or you can have uh, green moong with big chunks, like say 2-inch chunks of nadru, and cooked with either that if you only want a vegetarian dish, or if you want, you can put mutton also in it, and then you can have mutton and moong dal and nadar. Both ways, it's quite delicious because the dal actually is the highlight of it. I mean, in my opinion, of course, I could be wrong. It's nice and comforting, and it's great to eat with rice. Okay, so now spices. The typical spice box in Kashmir has red chili, and we love to think of red chili as homegrown, but I'll come to that a little bit later. It is haldi, which comes from the other end of the country, yani ki Tamil Nadu. Uh, it and there is saunf. These three are the typical spices that are eaten. One of these on the left picture may be Kashmiri mirch, but there's another picture of glowing Kashmiri mirch spread out in like on a yeah, yes. This is, if you look at it very carefully, this is the shape of an actual mirch from Kashmir. This thing, I mean, they give you very fat and very dark mirchi and say this is Kashmiri mirchi, but it's not. If you actually want to know what a mirch grown in Kashmir looks like, this is what it looks like. Of course, once you piso it, you will not be able to tell is this Kashmiri or is it not. Then you have to take it home, cook with it, and then you see. You'll be able to tell. Just Shubhra, just remind me in 5 minutes time about the sun dried things. On the right hand side is garlands of chili. Like the family on the left have a like actually it's a graveyard in front of their little shop. So they've taken a cart and they've shoved it into the graveyard, and in the sun they've dried these green chilies. The family on the of the right of the picture, their house faces the national highway. So I don't know what's on the other side, but they probably thought it's a better idea to dry their chilies, probably in the from the family field or something. In you make a garland out of it, a mala, That's very common, a very common thing to do. And you hang it up so that the sun catches it. And then the next day you take it back in the at night, and again in the morning you put it on the opposite side so that both sides get the sun equally. And then when it's quite dry and a little just before it begins to get brittle, then you just take it off, take off the stem or the dantal, and send it to the mill to be peeled. So that's the story about Kashmiri mirch. If you go, like Shubhra had showed us another picture with some pran in it and some sacks of mirchi in it. Those things are, yes, this one. I won't be able to see very clearly, but almost none of these are actual mirch from Kashmir. These are okay. They may have been grown in Kashmir, but they're not really from the actual origin Kashmiri mirch. There's a genus, but there's so much of obfuscation in this. Like the old man of MDH who passed away a few months ago, he had taken Kashmiri mirch, uh, the real Kashmiri mirch. He had grown it in Bergi in Karnataka, and he had a whole um, industry of Kashmiri mirch grown in Bergi, and he had uh, farmers from Bergi, and he even used to have free schools for their children, free medical care for their wives. He had made a huge industry out of it, and he used to call it Kashmiri mirch, but none of it was grown on the soil of Kashmir. Now, is that right or is that wrong? I can't even say one way, I can't say another. Why? Because there is not very much land. Yes, those are pran. There's not very much land in Kashmir, and you can't, unfortunately, grow something wherever you want, and you'll need a lot of space to grow it, and there's just too many ifs and buts. So you take it, grow it outside. Will it have the same fragrance? If you're a good agriculturist, there's no reason why you should not get a reasonably good crop. And then you have to dry it in very controlled conditions, because if you dry it, like say for example, I'll give you one example about chilies, but not Kashmiri chilies. If you The Rajasthani chilies, by the time they're plucked and dried in the sun, even if they're dried for 2 days, the moisture content is 3%. If you grow it in Andhra Pradesh, in or around Guntur, um, then dry it over there, the moisture content will be 11%. 11% means there's enough moisture in it so that if you ship it abroad, say to Saudi Arabia, for example, Saudi Arabia, you get they will most of them will arrive intact. If there are 3% moisture, none of the chilies will make the journey to Saudi Arabia stroke Australia stroke North America, anywhere else. And why is this? Because the drier something is, the more brittle it is. So if you can control all those qualifications, I dare say that you can grow chilies from the Kashmiri seed. You can grow it. You ought to be able to grow it outside. But the only thing is, of course, the soil conditions that you will not get anywhere outside Kashmir. Uh, are there any more questions about Kashmiri chilies? And you certainly, if you go to some random market in Bangalore, Hyderabad, or something, and or Ahmedabad, and say, "Can you give me Kashmiri mirchi?" I promise you that what the mirchi that they'll be giving you is not Kashmiri. Are there any more questions about Kashmiri mirchi, or shall we go on to some other? Why is fennel so important? Fennel, like, is a kind of, in my opinion, is a shortcut There are two reasons. One is it's a shortcut. There's uh, Zira and there's Dhanya, and we use, and you guys in Gujarat use Jira Dhano for, like, a shortcut kind of thing. So other people use Zira also and Dhanya also separately. This is a shortcut to use Zira and Dhanya, then you only need one thing. And also, fennel is a very good digestive, and also it is gentle and it is slightly sweet. And after all the harsh spices, if you want to call it that, it kind of gives a mellow end note to your mouthful. So I suppose that's what fennel is all about. And you never use the bardik, the dark green fennel. You always use the fat, pale green fennel, which incidentally comes from Gujarat, but that's neither here nor there. The pran over here, the shallots, they're actually not the shallots that you would get in the West. These are very, very pungent. But also, if you, my family, like my late father, hated the taste of shallots. I mean, so we never ever used to use it. We hardly used to buy a kilo for the whole year for such a large family. Um, but the only thing is that shallots, I have a friend who loves the flavor of it, and in his house, everything has plenty of shallots in it. And the way you have to use it is you have to peel it and cut it lengthwise and cut it into um, little strips, sort of thing, and then deep fry it. And when it's golden color, then you sort of like strain off all the oil and put it in a mortar and pestle, and then it's completely crisp at that time, and then you can get a paste out of it and just use that paste by the teaspoonful. All his dishes have this strong flavor of this shallots, and I must say pran, it's called in Kashmiri. I can only remember the Kashmiri name, and it's absolutely, absolutely delicious. The taste of pran, and also it's always used in Wazwan cooking for whatever that's worth. Sorry, chef, I'm not sure that Ratanjot is even uh, legal nowadays, so we don't really see it in the market at all. I've been told that it's a pran, not pan. But anyway, acha, are you asking about pran or pan? Pan is not a part of Kashmir at all. No, 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 no. You'll never see red stains on our roads and in the walls, etc. Never ever. It's probably we've just never developed that habit for it or the taste for it or anything. As far as I know, I don't think that even outside the valley I've ever seen a Kashmiri chewing pan for enjoyment or after dinner or something. Shahzira is used in, okay, so this is the way we cook. We finish cooking our whatever dish we're making for basically in large families, the main dish of the day is cooked in the evening so that it's fresh for the night. And then the next day at lunchtime, jo bacha kucha hai, we use that. um we just sort of finish that up, and then the new dish is made soon after lunch, if that answers the question. So the at the last, after you take your dish off the fire, you take shahzira and put, like, say a quarter teaspoon on the palm of one hand, and with the thumb of the other hand you sort of roll it around gently, and the shahzira is supposed to get crushed immediately. If it does not get crushed, if it remains whole, then that means that it's not Kashmiri shahzira. Even in Kashmir, this spice acts differently with different types of soil and at different altitudes. So in the Kashmiri airport, like when you're flying out of Kashmir, you see two or three malis working very, very hard in certain grassy verges which run parallel to the runway. And you think, wow, how hard these lovely guys are working, how nice of them. But it's not altruism, they're just looking after their shahzira crop because it grows in the airport. I don't know why. And then on their off day they pick up the whole lot, take it into town and sell it on the side of the road. And I've seen this so often, it's not even funny anymore. But the best quality of Shahzira is found in a side valley of Kashmir called Gurez. There are two side valleys. One is called Gurez, one is called Talil. I have never been to either. I've been trying to go since 1987, which is the first time that I came to Kashmir as an adult. But I was told that no, it's an army protected place. And, like, there's this thing about um, the army is kind of like an inimical presence in the valley, so people don't really feel comfortable around the army. So I was just told, oh no, no, yeah, army wale, you know how they are and that kind of thing. But being from the plains, I feel safe around an army person. So I mean, it's taken me a while to sort of like understand. It's just a point of view, I guess. Okay, shall we get on with some more questions? If I have not
Right.
answered, suddenly sometimes questions flash and I can only see dried ginger. That's called shiont in Kashmiri. Dried ginger, I personally have. Acha, Ratan Jot. I'll just Ratan Jot and dried ginger. So, uh, dried ginger, an aunt of my husband's told me in the first year of our marriage, she says, if you want to really produce great food, use dried ginger. So I started to use it, but I didn't feel that it had just this very acrid presence, and I was just simply not able to tell why. Then I asked mom, I said, because she's closely related to my mom-in-law, I said, why is she telling me to use it? So my mom-in-law looked at me as if, huh, she says, you listening to her for advice about cooking, huh? And that was the last time that I used it. I believe it is used, but especially in, I think, more in Pandit cooking. But unless you know how to use it skillfully, I think that it's a thing that you can just. I mean, I can live without dried ginger. But the thing is that, yeah, that's kitchen was really, really, absolutely the wars of the bosses. One thing I want to tell you about before Ratan Jyot, because I'm not sure, as I say, that Ratan Jyot is legal or not. I believe that it's cancer producing, so I have never read up on it. But Chef Manjeet Gill one day told me that nobody ever uses it, and please don't keep asking people about Ratan Jyot because you could get into trouble. So after that, I've just sort of taken it out of my brain. I have no idea whether the story is true or not, but I kind of trust Chef Manjeet Gill. So, um, sorry, Marvel. No, Marvel is not used in home cooking. Uh, Marvel is has zero flavor. It's the flour of the red coxcomb. As I say, it does not have any taste or any flavor, but it gives you a nice red color. And because, like Ratanjot, I suppose, and because of the red color, commercial cooks who want to show that, like, they can't be seen to be serving pika khana, is what I think. So what they do is they serve uh, Ratanjot tinted food, and people, like, it looks appetizing, so people probably uh, think that, oh wow, ये बड़ा अच्छा लाल सा रंग है, it should be great to taste. Sorry, Jyoti, I could only read the first part of your question.
Jyoti is asking, is there any significance to hing being used?
All across India, what I see is that Muslims I mean, anywhere, Lucknow, Hyderabad, wherever you go, it's not a, I don't know why, it's not a spice that um, eh, Muslims feel very comfortable about using. I don't know why. I suppose it's just it's I suppose something like a Mangal Sutra. If I gave a Mangal Sutra to a burqa clad lady and say ise pehen, they'll probably do a double take and say why should we or something. It's just one of those things. Or maybe from childhood they've never developed the mm, taste for it, or they don't see anything nice about it. It's something like me and Ratan Jot. If you told me that this has Ratan Jot in it, I'll say, okay, thank you, I'll pass. Something like that. No, no, healing is supposed to be a
Stimulant. But I have read and heard also that hing is often used to replace garlic.
Ha,
And
of course it
in
is.
Hindu vegetarian banya, especially cooking. So perhaps one doesn't need to replace garlic in Muslim cooking because everyone eats garlic. So probably the need for it never arose.
And I think garlic is considered highly stimulating for what God knows, but it's supposed to be stimulating. So if garlic is already giving you the, actually I forget about stimulating and not stimulating, but if you take what garlic brings to your dish, if you have like some there's a thing called shehlun in there's a uh, concept of shehlun in Kashmir. Like shehlun is the natural smell of something. So it's not an odor. An odor is like when you have rotting fish or something. No. But like say the natural smell of fish is would be called shehalun. The natural smell of meat would be called shehalun, like raw in its raw state. The natural smell of a couple of other things, I suppose, would be called stale, or I don't know what would be called this, but it's not enough to make you run saying that ye poison hai se mat khao. So if you have that, then you have you have a little bit of garlic, and the garlic can cut out the that raw smell, or the smell that makes you feel uncomfortable, basically. That's what that's what I think. So when you have garlic, then why do you need hing? Because hing plays exactly the same part in the food as garlic does. So yeah, I'm just coming to Zafran. So Shubhra told me that Zafran we have to take in another section altogether. So just tell me when the rest of the section is over, Shubhra, and I'll start talking about Zafran.
I think the only thing that's left is talking about the sun-dried produce,
Yes, okay.
and then we can move on to saffron.
Okay. So when my husband, who is around almost going to be 60 or thereabouts, is was a boy, like 12, 13, I dare say, maybe younger, maybe older. And when we used to live in the old house, of course, that time I was not married. Uh, Snow used to come and cover up the entire front door. So it was not that 1 year it happened or 2 years it happened. That was the way that it happened every year. It was like we were snowed out, Kashmir, Srinagar. So the only way that you could, I mean, rather than like shoveling snow off the door, you'd shovel it off the door. What would you do? You throw it into the neighbor's house, and then they would become enemies of yours. So the only thing that you could possibly do was to remain indoors and be like self-sufficient, as if you were living in an igloo which had provisions for 4 months. So that's what a lot of Kashmiri families used to do. stay inside the house and buy meat. And if you bought like a few kilos of meat, I mean, it would be frozen, and you would not have to worry about it growing bad. But then what vegetables would you eat? That's when dried vegetables came in. So when I was newly married, I got married in 91. For the first few years, my sister-in-law and I, when I was married, I only had one sister-in-law left who was unmarried, and the other one had already got married. So whatever I know is what Bubli and I used to do together. So we'd pester dad to, from September, we'd pester him, go and get us uh, piles of garlic. And then those garlic, Bubli and I used to climb up to the rafters on the some say upper loft of our old house, and we tie it up so that no cat could get at it. And of course, like the smell was quite strong, so whatever. And then that used to last for 6 months very clearly. Then the rest of the time used to be cut lots and lots of tomatoes into half and put them juicy side, the cut side up. We would put them on a sheet and we'd keep the sheet in the sun again on in the rafters, and one of us would have to stay over there for the whole day. And I used to love to sit alone and just look at all the new stuff that was happening around, and like the road and who was coming and who was going, because I could only see that from the first floor. I'd never seen it from the fourth floor. So that was quite a change of perspective to me. And I was like a little chore who was sitting, behind some curtains. Nobody could see me, but I could see everyone. So that gave me a sense of power. This little newbie coming from Delhi and married over here, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know the ways of Kashmir. I didn't even know the language. I didn't know the language at all. So it kind of gave me a feeling of at least I'm achieving something. And every few hours, I would have to turn the tomatoes, and Mubli would shout from downstairs, "Have you turned? Have you turned?" And I'd say yes or no or whatever. So that was like uh, after a few days, you'd bring them, you'd close the whole shop and bring it down, because otherwise cats and eagles and whatnot would get at it. And then the next day you'd take the whole caboodle right up again and start the whole procedure. And you'd spend about 6 hours upstairs when the sun shone on that little patch. And after a few days, like say a week or something, the tomatoes actually used to be sun dried. Of course, there was no question of having an oven or something, because this is a old style 80-year-old house in Kashmir. So there were no such things as ovens, and nobody had ever thought of baking a cake, as far as I know. So that was it. And that used to be done to everything, all the vegetables. You'd get whatever dad bought us. Like we would tell him, buy this and buy that, and we would bully him. So whatever Bubli did not like, she'd say, "Don't buy this," and both of us would say, "Oh, please don't buy this. Nobody wants it and nobody likes it." And we would dry hark, we would dry mint leaves, and everything had to be dried in lots, because the mint smell could not stick on the something else, on the fenugreek leaves smell, methi leaves smell, and so on and so forth. So we had to be quite scientific about it. And on a day that it was cloudy or rainy, then of course the whole thing just used to go for a toss, because then we could not dry anything. And we would dry all these things, and then they would last, and then we'd buy a couple of trays of eggs, and you would take green mooli, sorry, green moong, and you would mix it up with pink masoor, and you would, there was no meat or yes meat or whatever it was, and then you'd put a little bit of, like, you take 2 eggs or 6 eggs or however many people you had to cater for, hard boil them, remove the shells, uh, on a gentle fire with lots and lots of oil, start frying the whole boiled eggs. You would not cut them or anything. You would fry the whole boiled eggs with a pinch of haldi until they became golden from outside, and then that you would pop into the dal. and that was a delicious, that was a feast for us. And these or you would use something with a little bit of dried methi, or you would use dried turnips. That was a favorite with meat. I mean, or you would just do a jugaad and keep on using dried this with dried that, and that would be the best. I don't know, and the young generation of Kashmiris, because now um, climate change has taken place, and now it's you can't really get uh, there's sometimes there's snow. Like last year there was quite a lot, and our whole garden over here has got spoiled. But anyway, um, it's very difficult to get you don't really need dried vegetables anymore, basically. And you don't need dried bangan. Dried bangan was wow. Dried bangan, dried tomatoes, and you're good to go. That was such an amazing dish. And mom used to uh, slice onions on the ground floor, and Bubbly used to bring it up to me, and I used to put it on a patch of newspaper or some cloth or something on the fourth floor, and I used to keep turning them every like couple of hours, and even onions we used to dry. And these guys, of course, used to remain in the house all throughout winter. I used to go back by around October or something. So I never got to eat what they used to eat. And when I used to come back, it used to be cooked for me, but it never used to have the same taste because it didn't have the same relevance, because by then it had got like quite warm. So you're supposed to eat all these things when it's very, very cold and when it's icy and you can hardly move out of the house. Somebody asked two questions. Can you just read them out, please, Shubhra?
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the utensils used in Kashmiri homes and the material of the utensils?
Two materials. The Hindu, the Pandit community use brass, and the Muslim community use copper. No Kashmiri Muslim has. We had one in the old house. We had one uh, brass patila in which we used to make the salt tea, and we used to call it the sartal manjola, which means the brass saucepan, because it was like which utensil should I use? Oh, use the brass one because there was only one brass manjola. But in a Pandit family, everything used to be brass. So to say use a brass manjola means there were 10 or 12 brass manjolas. So that was the thing. So this is basically what used to be in the Kashmiri kitchen when I got married. These are these are called Lij, Leijj, I suppose. They each weigh about a kilo or more, and they would cost. I tried to price one last year, and it cost 1,500. But I'm going to go. It's a religion thing, Asim. Uh, what I've seen is that lots of Muslim communities within India use copper, and lots of everyone else uses brass. This is all copper because it's in a Muslim household. I stuck my arm through their grill and I said, "Do you mind if I take a picture of this most beautiful kitchen?" And they said yes. So I took it. It's all copper and it's all been kalai karod. That's why it looks like aluminium or steel or something, but actually it's not. You have you can cook your rice in a lid. You can in a pot basically. um, it's a very good conductor of heat, very good conveyor of heat, but the thing is that it's quite heavy, and there is a certain thinking in a family that has only had all this thing ever since they were born. Like it's not a novelty for them like it is for me. I think it's a huge novelty. And I try and, I mean, in this house where I live right now, I have as many copper things as possible. I'm not trying to hoard, but every year I try and buy one. Let's see if I even manage to get out of my garden gate this year. I'll certainly buy one, but so far the lockdown is really being quite a pain. So I don't go out of the house. And even if I did, I don't suppose any copper shops would be open. There is a market called Zena Kadal. Kadal means bridge. Zena means it's named after some king or the other of the 14th century. He is the one who's supposed to have built it in the 14th century, and that's supposed to have been the first bridge that was built over the Jhelum. That has become the uh, copper market of Srinagar, and they have around 50 odd shops, maybe more, maybe less. But they're just shops and shops crammed from floor to ceiling with everything in copper. They have new stuff, they have old designs, they have second hand copper. Shubra, I mean, Anand or Shubra have the, whoever's doing it, have the pictures so they can maybe show that. Um, at one time, like say when Bubli, my sister-in-law, got married, I think she got married in 2000 or 1998 or something. Hers was the last wedding in our family of that generation. uh we had got lots of stuff. uh, she had a whole trunk full of copper, whatever was usual. Like you usually have a trami, which is a huge big platter for four people to sit around at Wazwans. What you see on the right in this picture, this very long neck, that is some funny little fad that I've never seen before. It's a Aladdin kind of a something or the other, but everything else is completely typical Kashmiri, which is used every day. In fact, the thing that you see covered up with plastic is what is called an isband sauce, and you put rue in it. It's a seed, it's a flower seed, rue, and then you put you put heated coal on it, so the crackles and pops, and smoke comes out. The smoke is very sweet scented, so it kind of wards off evil eye, and it wards off any like malevolence in the room or whatever it is. So like if you come to see a new bride or a new baby or something, you would come with an isband sauce, or you would ask the host for the isband sauce, and you would bring a little bit of isband with you in a little uh, you would bring a little bit of isband, and then you would have it jalloud, and then people would feel very grateful. Oh, you know, when my daughter got married, she came with isband. It's that kind of thing. So all these are very intricately uh, connected to Kashmiri culture, and once copper begins going out of the market because of fashion or whatever, I really dread it. Then another thing is samovar. You have to have a samovar in your house. If you use it once a year, doesn't matter. If you use it like, say for example, if someone gets ill or something of that sort and then recovers, then you would make tea or make kahwa or something for a whole bunch of people, and like her, you would go and distribute it in the neighborhood. Like stand on the side of the road with a few disposable cups, and whoever comes, you offer them this thing, but you have to only do it out of a samovar. And the samovar at night you take back home, and you've given the whole neighborhood kahwa. So there are a few things like that which can only be made out of uh, uh, copper, and there are like eating vessels. They look like bowls, and many of them have lids on them. And then there are spoons and all sorts of things. I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's so many. But now the copper shops, like those that I go and visit, because I like to just keep looking around, and when I see a nice piece, I just buy it if the price is right, of course. They tell me that now the only thing that a bride requires is one samovar and four tramis. That's it. And most of them don't even bother to buy anything more. But maybe because, one day people will get a little bit of sense. Maybe it'll all come back, and that'll be good.
Shall we speak about saffron now for a bit?
Yes, yes,
Because it's 6:15, so I think we're running a little over with time, and you must be so tired of speaking for almost 2 hours now.
I kept thinking, why isn't anyone telling me to stop? Anyway, is
Yeah.
everyone still here? Whoever we had started out, or have they all gone home to put their
No, no,
feet up? And
the 41 of us are still here.
oh gosh, I do apologize. I mean, I just thought that why isn't anyone telling me to stop? So let me keep talking. So, saffron grows in very few places. Is thank you, Subindu. uh, uh, Very few places in the world. It has to have a dry climate. It has to be kind of like on a plateau. It has to be in a cold country or a cold place. It cannot be in the tropics. So Iran grows saffron. Iran grows the most amount of saffron in the world. There's a tiny little bit in Greece. There's a tiny little bit in South Italy in the something mountain, and I'm forgetting the name. Excuse me. And then it grows in Apna Pampur, where you saw those chilies drying. That's the same place where saffron grows. It's called Karivas, which basically means plateau. It starts growing. It grows from corms. Corms are seeds, but they look like walnuts or something of that sort. Uh, and in a few weeks, you plant the corms. You have to take them out of the ground every year and then plant them in October. And by November, they will have shoots will begin to come. And by November, December, and the they get finished. Pampur requires, I mean, sorry, saffron requires very precise growing conditions. It can't be too cold, it can't be too rainy, it can't be too warm, it cannot be too well watered. It has to have just the right amount of rain. You can't say that, oh, government initiative has given us water pumps, so let's start pumping these fields, because then you won't get any saffron. So it's a very fussy plant, and it gives you very good returns, of course. Some 4 lakhs per kilo or something of that sort, I think is a present price. Every place that grows saffron has 3 chemicals in it: saffronol, crocine like the sirki dawai wali goli, and picrocrocine. One has color, I mean, one deals with color, one deals with flavor, and one deals with strength. You require all these in various proportions, and the where they have the best proportion is said to be Kashmir. But it's not because, I'm married in Kashmir, so I have to keep taking up for Kashmir. Nothing of that sort. But saffron scientists have said that it has the best. The strands are the longest, and the color is very good. If it's not a good color, like much of Iran does not have very good saffron, and some of it, like the top quality in Iran, does have very good saffron. So it's not that, oh, without going to Iran, I'll just say all saffron that is grown in Iran is rubbish. No, it's not like that. You ask me any specific questions, I'll be more than happy to tell you.
Guys, if there are any questions on saffron, please ask them so ma'am can answer them. I'll share a picture of Keva that she had shared with me, which is just a
Kesar
second.
kahwa, Shibendu. So kahwa you can make of many ways. You can put tea leaf in it, which does not leave any color, and just for the strength. And you just have to put a few strands of kahwa on it, a little bit of sugar, and you're done. I would never put um, green elachi in kahwa. If there's going to be almonds, is not a flavor, na? You cannot put two flavors into 1 cup. So almonds is like a nice, rich and nourishing ingredient, and so is oh, by the way, sorry, I'm doing PR for unpaid PR for all my friends. This lady who has made this has got actually paper mache artists to paint on this, and then she's fired these. So even these cups and saucers are available for sale. If in case anyone wants, I'll be happy to share whatever Shubhra asks me to do. And in case Shubhra does not want this kind of stuff happening, I'll won't bother to share it.
You can send. I'll ask you for
And
the
okay,
numbers
okay,
and
okay,
shortly.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
ठीक है, ठीक है.
Rushina had a question. She's asking
Whoa. Yes,
how
sorry.
much of saffron is used in Kashmiri cuisine.
None, nothing at all. No saffron is used except for kahwa. It's very strange. All vazas will ask for kahwa because all vazas know that मेरी बेटी की एक ही बार शादी होने वाली है. So no matter what they ask for an arm and a leg. The father of the bride will give an arm and a leg. But actually, the vazas ask for it, but they never use it. And even if they use it, nobody would ever get the taste of saffron in all this gitch pitch melange of other flavors. Um,
There is another question, if I
huh.
may ask, on
Yes,
saffron.
yes.
Ragini is saying Kashmiri saffron is the sweetest, they say, and the Spanish is the most unique because it's oven dried. What she's asking is the saffron industry truly under as much ecological threat as is reported?
Okay, that's a bit of a difficult question to ask. I'll tell you why. Because, sorry, it's a bit of a difficult question to answer because a friend of mine from whom I've got all my knowledge of saffron, he is the largest saffron dealer in India. Uh, His name is Baby Saffron, Baby. So you can just go online and order Baby Saffron. No telephone numbers required for this one. It's the only saffron that I use, and my husband has collected various saffron samples from various people. And the other day, I made a nice dessert for him, and uh, some Iranian saffron. And I said, "Can you get the taste of the saffron?" And he said, "No." So it just proves that when you're paying good money, just pay 1 rupee more and get the best. Don't like say, no, no, this is 1 rupee and this is 2 rupees, so let me take the 1 rupee thing. That's not economy. I'm sorry. um Baby Saffron, Harpreet Chabra is his name. He has been, in fact, I went with him on one of his visits to Iran. He says that in all his travels in Spain, he has never seen saffron growing. And I'll tell you why. Because the main thing about saffron is planting it and then bending over backwards to pluck the saffron every morning, very early in the morning. It cannot be, you cannot get a harvesting machine and go cut around several kilometers and ek din mein sab kuch khatam. It's very, very labor intensive. And that kind of trained labor is simply not available at a bargain basement price in Europe. You have to pay the minimum wages in euros. And then if you do that, you're pricing your saffron out of the market just by paying minimum wages because it's the only place in Europe which has a large enough um, crop that will require outside help. Otherwise, in Italy, for example, what I have understood is that the crop is so tiny that like the local family only does it. जिसका खेत है वो खुद करते हैं and that's it. Given that it's primarily women,
I'll ask the question before that, ma'am, is
yes.
usually saffron is handpicked and processed, but while going through the website of the baby brand saffron,
Huh.
I realized they have come up with fully automated factories. What does that mean for the locals of Pampore and Kishtwar,
No,
given
no,
that
no,
it's
no, no,
primarily.
no, 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 no,
Hmm.
no, no. You have to take the, it's a very good question, of course. You have to take the saffron out of the fields manually. Okay, then you have to dry it or fix it. Fix it means subject it to a minimal amount of heat so that when you ship it to Delhi or wherever, the color is fast. So Harpreet will will send his people over to collect it from your field, and then he will bring it to his factory just outside Delhi, and there he will begin processing it. Harpreet Chabra is not going to sit down wearing dhoti kurta and process it himself, but his people will do it in fully automated conditions. But the in Pampur, it is not grown in fully automated conditions. And Harpreet buys saffron wherever he finds good saffron. Like one day he was feeling, when we had both gone to Iran, he was feeling very depressed and he says, "Yeah, I bought you on a wild goose chase." I said, don't think about me. Just, I was feeling really stupid wearing a black abaya with a black shirt. I mean, black headscarf, which I couldn't even take off. If it slipped, people would begin looking at me in the market. So I had to just keep it fastened on all the time. That was quite a pain. But anyway, I said, Iske upar, we are not even getting good saffron. That's too bad. But then one day we went to some ramshackle place and he looked at the saffron and his whole face lit up and he said, "This is called saffron." Of course, when the guy came back, he looked very depressed as if he was not satisfied. But I saw his eye gleam, so I knew that we were onto a good thing. And now even I can tell good saffron from quite a distance away. Sorry, ma'am, are you able
Can
to
you,
something?
yeah, can you recognize, how do you basically recognize genuine and good quality saffron is the question.
It's too difficult. When I was writing the book, I used to meet Harpreet almost every week. We used to meet in Emperor's Lounge in the Taj Hotel in Delhi. And he used to give me one class or the other. Then, when he thought that I knew enough to write the book. I didn't know enough to be a saffron dealer. So he told me, he says, "Now I'm going to give you, this is your imtihan." And he takes out a battered looking briefcase and he shows me Gucci's. Gucci's is the way the Iranian ladies take saffron and put it like between their thumb and their finger over here. They put rice flour paste and then they keep taking strands of saffron and putting it over here until they get a whole bunch, like a bunch of flowers or something, and then they tighten it. And because of the rice flour paste, the bottom sticks together but the top is like a big fat bunch of flowers. I don't know how best to describe it. And then it just stays stuck like this. So there was one Gucci like that. I had never seen a Gucci in my life, so I was quite taken aback. And then there were a few other things, and I was simply not able to tell what was genuine saffron and what was not. Now I think I will be able to. The best looking saffron turned out to be crepe paper dyed the appropriate color. Can you believe it? I mean, the kind of things that people do, because there's 4 lakhs per kilo involved. So people will just do anything to try and make a quick buck. And sometimes they even put genuine saffron along with the rubbish stuff. And sometimes it's just bad saffron or it's just old saffron. That's it. So it's uh, I would say just buy not because Harpreet is my friend. I mean, you don't have to. There's another shop in Srinagar where you can buy from. I've always seen, whenever I've taken people there and whenever they have seen the saffron, I've just looked at it surreptitiously and smelt it, and it looks even, if anything, better than baby saffron. I don't ask the prices because I'm never going to buy all this stuff and I have no interest. And besides, it's not my. I mean, I don't want to sound like a sort of a dealer and a wheeler dealer and somebody who brings customers, etc., etc. So I try and keep away from all that. But that person, Amin bin Khalik, also sells extremely good saffron. Baki, I wouldn't even know where to get very good saffron from. So that's it.
Right. I think
Yeah, yeah,
that
please do log out.
yeah, I think we are done. We are done now.
One and
And
a
ma'am,
half
you
hours, 2.5 hours,
oh,
right?
no, 2.5 hours. Yes, you've been speaking. I think you need a cup of chai and a break. So we'll close this now. I'm sure there are lots of questions still unanswered, and there will be more. But I think we'll need a whole new session to be able to answer all the questions.
Yeah,
But ma'am,
Janice, I didn't even answer some of your questions. I'm so sorry.
yeah. But thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking the time out and doing this with us today.
And
It's
thank you
it's
for not
been
going off to sleep. I didn't hear any snores anywhere. So that's really very encouraging.
we were all absolutely enthralled. It was just fantastic. I mean, like I can't thank you enough. And so we'll close now, and I will send everyone a link to the recording in case they miss some bits, due to a bad connection or something. You can catch up on that. So, ma'am, is there anything you'd like to say to us before we end this?
And there are so many, you know, I'm a Brahmin. I hate you because you're a so and so. I'm a something else. So I can't stand people from other faiths, etc., etc. Let at least food unite us all. That's one thing that I can say. You know, I don't have to eat your food every day, but let me try it once and let me at least get some pleasure. Let me try and see the pleasure that it gives you. Let me try, like, I've known Rosina for I don't know how many years. I've never tasted her food, and I'm dying to taste something of hers that has jambu in it. I've never been able to taste jambu. So I mean, it's just, if you can get the pleasure or that an ingredient has given somebody all their lives, if you can just get it momentarily, it's just an experience to enrich your life. That's it.
What absolutely wonderful words to end this. And with that, thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Let's
everyone for bearing up.
yes, let us eat each other's food, and in that, find joy. A beautiful message in the end. Absolutely, Chef Japir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. We're going to log out now. I'm going to end this recording, and so bye bye. See you hopefully soon. Not too
Bye. Thanks a
soon.
lot, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Bye, Subra.